So it all started here. I bet you guys know where this house is. Okay, it's down on Old Bethlehem Pike, up from the Lutheran Church, right? And the Manor House, and you then come upon, and this is a home of Jacob Uberoth. Jacob Uberoth was a farmer, and he owned the land where the Uberoth mine, which was the largest of the Priesville zinc mines. He owned the land, and it was pretty infertile. And he tried to burn things like the calamine in his kilns. He wasn't getting any good results. And one day, he took a couple labs, he took around trying to figure out what it was, couldn't figure it out. One day, a guy by the name of William Theodore Roper came along in 1845, and he said, he saw the guys in the fields, and he started talking. He said, yeah, I never did anything on these fields. I got this, I got these rocks. I don't know what they are, but I'm not, So he said, well, I'm a chemist, and he was a chemist. He was a chemist. He was the administrator of the Bethlehem Church in Bethlehem. He was the head of the choir. He taught school. He was a music teacher. So yeah, he was a very talented guy, but he was a chemist. And said, listen, I'll take it back to Bethlehem. So they took it to a foundry in Bethlehem, and the foundry was able to combine that oxidized ore, the calamine, combine it with copper, and guess what? Got zinc, got brass. So they knew then it was zinc. And okay, so that's problem number one solved. Problem number two is that in 1845 there wasn't a process in America to make zinc oxide. And what they wanted it for, principally at that time, the biggest need was in the paint manufacturing business, because they understood that zinc oxide was a better additive to paint than lead. You got a whiter paint, it spread better, it was less toxic, so they knew it was better. And they were importing zinc oxide from France. They called it French white. And they were getting it from France and elsewhere in Europe. There wasn't a process to make it in the States. So it took a little time for this to develop, but in the early 1850s, a chemist by the name of Samuel Wetherell, and he was from a family of big Philadelphia Quaker family. They owned mines, they owned merchant houses, they owned paint factories, big Philadelphia family. He was part of that family. He was a chemist. He was working up in North Jersey, and he was working with ores that were coming out of Sussex County, and they were having some success in making zinc, but it was an expensive process, and the product wasn't good. So he did develop a process to take zinc ore and turn it directly into zinc oxide. But what he found is that he learned about the ores here in Bethlehem. So he came over here, cut a deal to use these ores, and he got a superior product when he used them. So he said, oh, this is great. He went back to his employer and said, hey, I got the mineral rights to use these great ores over in Bethlehem, and I developed this process to turn zinc ore into zinc oxide. Let's do a deal, right? And his employer said, you know what? You developed that process in our lab, so I think we own it. And he said, no, you don't. And he walked in, according to what's written, picked up his hat on and walked out the door. And he came to Bethlehem. Obviously, he had financial backing. He came to Bethlehem, built a plant in South Bethlehem to utilize his newly designed, developed patented process. And he had the mineral rights for the ore here. So he started, at that point, making zinc in Bethlehem, zinc oxide. It was the mine, there's the house. The mine is actually up the road, about 800 feet up the road on the left-hand side. There's a gate there now. It's a little gate with no trespassing sign, but it's over there. So it's not far from this house. They would mine the ore there. They would take over South Mountain, and first in mule trains and later mule carts to the Bethlehem, which was down by Peggy Bridge in Bethlehem. That's where the plant was. So, this is, that's a picture of the 19th century mine, probably around 1876 perhaps. And zinc commenced mining in 1853 along with the plant in Bethlehem. There's the plant in Bethlehem, along the Lehigh River. state-of-the-art, employed 700 people, preceded the steel industry. It was there before the iron companies. And so they were mining the zinc in Seidersville, and that went on until 1876. And in 1876, the patent ran out. There were bad economic conditions. They were able to find some other good sources of zinc ore. And so zinc mining stopped in 1876 in Seidersville, for the most part. But then again, started up again, and that first company is called Lehigh Zinc Company. It started up again under a different company in 1881 and continued until 1893, at which time the mines shut entirely. There were bad economic conditions in 1893. The successor company to Lehigh Zinc had management problems. The owner had passed and lots of issues. So the mines closed. They tried to sell it, and finally were able to sell it in 1899. And they sold it to a company named that you'll recognize, New Jersey Zinc Company bought it. Now, New Jersey Zinc in 1899 was in the process of basically developing a monopoly on zinc. And so their interest was to have the mine and the reserves, but they didn't have any interest in mining it. They just didn't want somebody else to mine it. Okay, so consequently, its mine didn't operate until 1958. And many of you in this room will remember the New Jersey Zinc mine, the 20th century New Jersey Zinc mine. They started to develop it right after World War II. It took about 10 years to build out the mine, but they started production in 1958. It ran until 1983. Unlike the 19th century mines, which were essentially mine pits with veins following ores coming out from the pits, the mines in the 20th century were all underground, 2,000 feet below the surface in some cases. This building still exists on Camp Meeting Road. You can now owned by Lehigh University. You can see it. This head frame is gone. They removed that when they shut down the mine. So in the 19th century, they produced about 250 tons of ore, and the grade of it was about 30% to 45% zinc. Was the average. Oops, didn't need to do that. Unfortunately, let's go forward, can't go back. And then in the 20th century, 900,000 tons of ore was produced, and the grade was only like 5-6%, because the deeper you went, the lower the lower the concentration of zinc in the ore. So they were pretty well worked out by 1983 when the mines closed. It was sold to the Stapler Development Company. So, the biggest technical challenge in these mines, whether it was the 19th century or the 20th century, was water. I don't have any pictures from the 19th century which demonstrate the water, but I have two. The one on the left from the 1950s, the one on the right from the 1970s, when they had an outburst and they were having 60,000 gallons of water a minute flow into the mine, and they had to shuttle bulkheads. Nobody died, fortunately, but it was a huge incident.
Where did they acquire that water from?
It's the basic water low table of the area.
Local water?
It's local. It's all local water, and running in between the limestone streams. Yeah, it is. A lot of people have concluded this is the wettest mine in America.
I know that man.
Oh, you do? Mayor Lanning?
Sure do.
Yeah.
Went to school with the kids.
Yeah, he's, I work a lot with his son, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's helped us quite a bit. And yeah, he was a good man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And here's two quotes from the 19th century. It was, the water had to be fought by the pumps throughout every foot sunk and for every minute in the life of the mine. And it said, or to put the matter in another way, the water flowing into the shaft would fill it to a depth of 27 feet in 15 minutes. So you can imagine how much water comes in there. So this is a significant technical issue. So what do you do? One, what do? Here are the guys sitting around the table. We've got a rich stream of ore here. The purity was really high. That's one of the great things about the Seidersville zinc. They're very high purity, not a lot of contaminants. But we got all this water, we can't deal with it. We're starting to run out of options. What do? Well, you call a Cornish guy is what you do. And because they were well known for, we talked about their mining know-how, but they're also well known in steam technology, particularly in mining applications. And it all ties together. Cornwall is, at that time, middle part of the 19th century, mined half the world's production of copper and tin, and other products as well, but those are the larger production ones. And for generations, they have been developing, ever since steam technology developed at the very end of the 17th century, early part of the 18th, Cornish engineers very early adopted it because their mines were deep, they had water issues, and so a lot of the early inventors, if you will, of advancements in steam technology were Cornish, and the people who learned how to apply it were Cornish. So we need a Cornish guy was the answer. And the guy they got was a fellow by the name of John West. And he built this engine called the President. And he actually came to the mines in mid part of the 1860s, put a couple engines in, and so they had like about 4 or 5 engines working, trying to pump out the water. None of it was doing the job as the mine was now going deeper and deeper. It was down like 150, going down towards 200 feet. And so the management gave him a job, said, we don't care what it costs. You got to go outside, what's ever been built before, but we need a pumping engine that's going to deal with this water because this mine's important. So he got the deal to build an engine which is, simply said, the largest single-cylinder stationary steam engine ever made anywhere in the world. It supposedly was named after President Grant, who had been invited to attend the ceremonies, we think, but didn't show up. There's lots of reasons why, or legendary stories of why he didn't show up. Some involving alcohol. So we don't know. But he didn't make it. Although one of his best buddies, one of his best drinking buddies from Philadelphia, did show up for the opening ceremonies. But a massive engine, 3,000 horsepower. The cylinder is 110 inches in diameter. That's like 9 feet. They actually, while they were building it, they had the cylinder on the side, and they actually had a banquet in it one night. Okay, so they did. It was a massive. Needed 20 steam boilers to operate. Burned about 800 tons of coal a month, and ran from 1872 until 1876, and then intermittently from 1881 to 1892. Finally, in 1892, one of its beams broke. These are what they call the beams. One of them broke. The company was in bad shape at the time, couldn't afford to rebuild it, and tried a bunch of other methods to try to get the water out, but the mine quickly filled with water, and they had to shut it entirely in 1893. So this engine was capable of drawing 17,000 gallons of water a minute, or 24.5 million gallons a day. So it was absolutely massive single-cylinder engine. So this is the engine that we've gone about to recreate. And I'm going to move on to that part of the second part. We're really talking about recreating the engine. I'm going to let you read this quote. It's always meant a lot to me. It's by a guy named Vartan Gregorian. He said this while he was running the New York library system in the 1970s when they were completely going under. And he was obviously pinching for money. And but I think it's, for me, it means a lot because I know that we have relied on libraries, archivists. That's the type of information we needed to rebuild the engine the way you're about to see it. And it hasn't been, I also want to say, this isn't just all about me, because I'm up here talking, but it's not, I have a team that I work with. There's a gentleman by the name of Damien Nance, who's probably the world's expert on Cornish engines. And of Cornish engine houses. He's written the definitive books on them. He works closely with me. Mike Cause, who's a mine historian who's written about the Seidersville mines. Bob Lanning, who son of mayor, who showed us all around the site. I know every corner of that mine because Bob, as a kid, was trespassing there daily. And so I know every corner of that site. Jerry Lennon, who's a Lehigh professor, managed to help us engage the students at Lehigh because Lehigh owns the property. And lastly but not least, Aaron Kinzer in the real estate department, who's been my steadfast partner through the whole thing. So what do we know in order to recreate the engine? Or what didn't we know? Let's start with what I didn't know or what we didn't know. The engine house is a ruin. You see a picture of it up there. It's just 4 stone walls. The engine itself was scrapped entirely in 1900. They took it out in pieces, dynamited it, hauled it away. Became a USS Maine that replaced the USS Maine that went down to Havana Harbor. The original drawings are missing. Now, I say missing because the guys at New Jersey Zinc that I talked to say they were around in 1983 when they closed the mine. They were in a tube, and they had a little sink at the mine plant, and they said they were in there, but nobody knows where they went. And we've tried everywhere, looked everywhere, nobody knows. But I keep hoping there's somebody's at it, and they will show up someday. I really say. I hope that's what happens. We've never found a photograph of the engine. The engine house is probably a dark place in a dark room with early photography, so we never really have a photo of the engine. And the information we have in the boiler house is fairly sketchy. But we do have information that we did use, and this is where our archivists and museum and friends have come in most helpful. I'll start back again with the ruins of the engine house. Well, it's a little bit of both. The good thing about this engine, it was a house-built engine. In other words, the engine stone walls are really part of the engine. That's what held the engine up. So that house was never used for anything other than to hold the President engine. So little nooks and crannies and gaps here or placements here that you can actually see and rebuild where all the pieces and parts fit in the house because it was never redesigned for anything else. We also have specifications, not drawings, but specifications, 26 pages of specifications, which are held in the Moravian Church archives. I think that's because when the first Lehigh Zinc Company shut down in 1878, there was nowhere else to place it, so they gave it to the Moravian Church because they actually had a repository. But that information has been helpful. We have found engravings and descriptions and technical journals. A place that you wouldn't necessarily think, student theses. Back in the 19th century, a graduate from college, undergraduate, had to write a thesis. And Lehigh University has them, Lafayette has them, and we've been able to study these theses, and they give us a lot of information. One guy at Lafayette actually drew these wonderful drawings, full-scale drawings, which I am certain he took from the original drawings of the company. So, and then we do have exterior photographs of all the other buildings. So, and of the mines. So we were able to take all that information and put it together into a display that we've developed to just finish this in 2022, late in 2022. The centerpiece of this is a scale model of the engine, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I would encourage you, if you haven't been down to the museum, National Museum of Industrial History on Southside Bethlehem, that please do go, because I think you'll be very impressed with what you see there. It's an excellent museum. They have this display on the President, which is a permanent display. And I don't know if I can get to this quote. This one's pretty good. It says, this is from a mining journal when the engine started up in January 1872. It said when the engine had gotten well underway, President Webster, he was the president of the company, broke a bottle of wine on one of the walking beams, right? We saw it there, and declared it the president in honor of the chief magistrate of our country, USA, right? And who was President Grant at the time, and as a fitting name for an engine which is chief of all engines in power. So, not what I quote. And so that display's there. A little closer look at the engine model itself. It's mahogany wood base, mild steel, brass, beautiful model. I'm going to tell a story how this happened. I mentioned Damien Nance. He lives in America, but he's from Cornwall. He has a brother Johnny who still lives in England. And there's this old fair that goes on every year in Devon called the Bampton Charter Fair. It's been going on since the reign of King John, which was, for your history, you remember that's 1215, Magna Carta, right? They've had this fair every year. And anyway, Johnny went to the Bampton Fair in 2017, and this guy, they got talking to this guy there, and the guy said his name was Tony Mott, Anthony Mott, Tony Mott. And Tony said, "Oh, your last name is Nance, so you're in relationship to Damien Nance." And Johnny said, "Well, I happen to be his brother." He said, "Well, Damien wrote this article for the Trevethik Society Journal about this President engine in America, and I would love to be able to model that engine." And so Johnny got Tony in touch with Damien, and Damien got me involved, of course. And for 5 years, we worked with Tony to build this model. He is an award-winning model designer in England. He's got many awards. I think he's built about 40 what they call serialized models. He's written a couple books, Historic Engines Worth Modeling. So I recommend these books only if you really want to build a model. It's pretty thick with technical. But if you're a model builder, and but very well regarded model builder, we were absolutely delighted that he would take this project on. So I want to show you that this model also runs. You see that? Yeah, it runs on compressed air. And actually, I did this because I really like the looks of that blonde lady over there. That's my wife. She's. Okay, and another part of the display is this drawing, because we wanted to, it's great to have a model, but we also wanted to have something that showed how the engine fit inside the engine house, because so we had this cutaway view. And this was built by a guy named Alex Carnes, and we got a hold of him through the museum, National Museum. He's done a lot of work down there. First and number one, he's an expert in steam engines. He goes around the world to England, India, you name it, rebuilding vintage steam engines. So I really understand steam engines, but more than that, he's a very talented graphic designer and artist. This spectral sketch is 24 by 18. It's now down at the museum as part of the display, and I've watched him do some of the work. It's hardly used in straight edge. It's all influenced. He's actually he put himself in here. There he is, so you can get to see the scale, right? That helps you with the scale, right? And he also likes birds. He likes birds a lot, so he decided it was worthwhile to have this prehistoric scale blue jay. I think I've ever seen this blue jay coming after me. I'm going the other way. And he likes birds, but I haven't seen this. He lives up in Boston, but apparently when he draws, he has this parrot that sits on his shoulder and helps him or whatever. But anyway, he must not pay enough attention to the parrot, because somewhere towards the end, the parrot took a bite there and a bite there. So if you go down to the museum and you take a look at this, you want to look for where the parrot took a bite. It's all there. And the main thing today, we really want to show you, we're going to show a 15-minute movie of how we recreated the engine in the mine. And this was done by Guy Jansen in Belgium. And the way Guy got a hold of us, he saw a PowerPoint that we did at Friends of Lehigh University Libraries. We did a presentation in 2019, I think, and it got online, and he found it, I think, in that year, was maybe early in 2020, and he got a hold of us and said, "Wow, I really want to. This is what I do. I'm a retired nuclear engineer. I love steam engines. And he has a whole collection of steam animated movies of steam engines. I really like to make that engine," and that was a year's project. And if fate is with us, I'm gonna be able to play it. So this is about 15 minutes. You're gonna have to read the script. It has music, right? It's classical music, American classical music, by the way, from the period. I know it's after dinner. I know it's late. If you start to snore a little bit, I don't mind. I understand, you know. I might, but the movie's very interesting. So we do have a plan, by the way, to actually put a verbal voiceover on it, but that hasn't quite been able to get there yet. Let's see if I can get to one. The music's going to rise. I think it's all right. Yeah, this is the part that gets stuck. Sometimes I got to tickle it. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes. Let's just see. I was going to try to turn the sound. Let me do this again. This is what I got to do. Okay. There we go. So that's the Uber mine pit that you would see over here today. Of course, now it has trees. Then it did have trees, right? see these steam engines operating in steam, they're amazingly quiet. It's not like not like a combustion engine. It's very. So I think I'll save the credits, but I hope you enjoy the movie. It's a great deal of effort on Guy's part. I think he did a masterful job with it. I've had people tell me it's one of the best technical descriptions that they've seen made. There's a longer version, that's the 15-minute, there's a half an hour, so those of you who are technocrats and really want to understand the workings, just some screenshots, but the longer version will actually take you inside the engine itself. You can see the piston going up and down, you can see the valves, how they operated, and that's all online on my website. So how the lift and plunger pumps work, so it's the greater details there, but it's a bit long to show for a talk. So I'm going to switch to the last part, really, of the presentation about why staying in this location is important. Well, nothing else has ever really been done there since 1893 when the mines shut down on the property where the engine house is located, other than a few people swimming, I understand. I think that's happened. But they don't leave too much other than maybe a Coke bottle or a tin can, beer cans. But it is important to save it because it's the only structure and physical setting we know of one of the, really the zinc industry is the first modern industrial industry in Bethlehem and one of the earliest in the Lehigh Valley overall. So it's important from that perspective. This is the only real remnant of it left. Secondly, the engine house is part of a landmark engine. It was the largest single-cylinder stationary engine ever made anywhere in the world. It's a credit not only to the Cornish, but also to the manufacturers in Philadelphia, the foundries who made this engine. And the engine house itself is the only surviving example of a Cornish-style engine house in America. And in Cornwall, where they have about 200 of these, it's the basis of a UNESCO World Heritage landscape. So in a sense, what we have here is an extension of that landscape. Here's a picture, very appropriate for today, I think, although we didn't get quite that much snow, right, despite warnings. But that's a good aerial view of the engine house. So you can see how thick that back wall is that supported those walking beams, and you can get a sense of the, where's my, there, you can get a sense of the pit behind the That's the pump shaft. So, and the location, if you look just more generally, it's a very beautiful location. I have photos here from different times of year, and the lake, the mine pit is water filled. The level of water there varies a bit based on the season and precipitation, but it's generally fairly constant. So really, what's going to happen next in Seidersville is the question that I am seeking an answer to. You can see on the left there, that's where the engine house looks today. It's a rather sad state. You can see what they look like in Cornwall. That's engine houses along some of the picturesque cliffs in Cornwall that many engine houses in Cornwall have been restored, or at least stabilized. And then elsewhere in the world where they have these engine houses, they too have been turned into museums and stabilized and repaired. I said it's really the only surviving example, so there were others. We know from the historic record that this is Seidersville here in the middle, but there were mostly of them were in southeastern PA, and maybe into Maryland. And the reason why is that in the 1840s and 50s, one of the first places the Cornish came to were the copper mines in Montgomery County, right near Norristown. And there were very rich copper mines there, copper, also nickel, and some silver, not much. And so the Cornish were recruited there first in the 1840s and 50s. The town of Audubon, which at the time was known as Shannonville, was a very prosperous Cornish community. And so a number of these engine houses were built. However, they've all disappeared with time. As you can expect, because this is the only Cornish-style engine house in America, and because the Cornish didn't really know that it was here until the last 10 years, roughly, because it was hidden behind a fence, it was industrial property, no trespassing, nobody knew about it in a broader sense. And when the Cornish found out that we have this engine house, which is, and from them, an engine house, it's like a windmills for the Dutch. It's like the iconic symbol of their culture. So the fact that we have one here is a great interest to them. They made, that's Damien Nance, this gentleman, here's Damien. You can probably recognize this guy. This little one here, they didn't make a bard. But they made Damien and myself bards at different years. But I'm not bragging about that. It's really the point is that I wanted to express is that this is so incredibly important to them that this structure is here and that it's preserved. I was interviewed on BBC Radio about it. So it's one of those few places that we have where it's a great local significance, regional significance, but also really has international significance. So, my kind of thinking on this is we're kind of responsible for a World Heritage place, and people have a right to be able to see a World Heritage place, and people who own it have an obligation to make it, to preserve it. I mean, that's this is a tombstone from. I don't know if there's a little, very tiny graveyard on the corner of Oakhurst Road and Old Bethlehem Pike, and it's tucked away. It's not maintained, but it's about Cornish miners. And if you go in, there's only like about 7 graves in there. But you go in, many of the stones say one from Cornwall, and it kind of speaks to the fact that the Cornish are very proud that are here, very proud of where they came from, just as many ethnic groups are. Of course, they should be. And the Cornish are very proud of the people that they've sent overseas. Almost half the population of Cornwall in the 19th century went overseas for opportunities. So as I said, it's a great interest to them. So what have we done? Well, Lehigh University, as I mentioned, owned property. We have gotten grants from the state of Pennsylvania on two occasions, and also from the National Trust. We've hired a bunch of consultants, for the most part, to give us architectural assessments, structural assessments, and and I'm going to talk about what we've done there. Lehigh has reasons for doing this. I'm not going to go through all this other than to say Lehigh obtained the property in 2012 as a donation from the Stabler Foundation. Mr. Stabler and his wife had passed, but the trustees of the Stabler Foundation said, what would Don want to do with this property? Say he'd want to give it to Lehigh. He actually donated 750. This is just on roughly 50 acres, 750 acres, but he gave it to Lehigh at that time. But if you go back over the generations, Lehigh has had a connection with this property from an academic perspective or in some other manner since the beginning. And that William Roper that I mentioned way back when, who figured out that it was zinc, he became Lehigh's one of the first 5 professors of Lehigh. He was their first professor of geology and mineralogy. So there's a long history of Lehigh crossing paths with this place. So what we've done, we've removed vegetation. We did a total scan of the building. That's what you see in the middle. These are actually computerized scans. 760 million data points. We can see if the stone moved by 1/16 of an inch. I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but supposedly I've been told that we can do that. But we use these scans to actually create construction drawings. So we do have drawings on how to repair the building. And we don't have money yet to repair the building, but we have drawings on how to do it. We got that with our grant money. And we've also, had Spillman Farmer architects do renderings of what a park area might look like, which I will now show you. Okay, and this is what we would see if we can get the building stabilized and repaired. What we would see would look like. We'd have a little parkway heading back towards the mine pit. This over here is, you may have saw mentioned, there's one surviving metal boiler from the building, and that's, we have a plan to put it there, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. The idea being that you'll be able to walk around it and look into the pump shaft, but then also out into the mine pit. And it'll be a very nice park with, of course, interpretive signage and so forth. Be able to go inside the engine house. We'll have a circular platform that's the same size as the cylinder was and located in the same place, or perhaps maybe it'll be slightly bigger, and we'll have an insertion so you can see how big the cylinder was. And I talked about the boiler. And I was actually at this meeting in 2018 so I don't know if the guy's here today, but there was a guy who used to work at the American Atelier Furniture Factory on Front Street in Allentown. And he sat we were in a different room, he kind of sat there. And he said, in that building, they have one of the boilers from the President engine. Now, that wasn't news to me. We knew that because Mike Pearson, the historian at the National Museum of Industrial History, had learned that from the Bueller family, who had originally built the furniture factory in 1901. And that family, through 3 generations, passed down. Yeah, we needed a water tank, so we got one of the boilers from the President engine. We got a good deal on it in 1901, and we put it in the building as the building was being built. It's 30 feet long, okay, so it's not small. And anyway, so we knew about this, and when the building was scheduled for demolition, we found out in 2020 or 2021, I forget, 2020, I think. We found out they were planning to take the building down. We started a conversation with the current owner to get it out. And this last January, we actually did pull it out of the basement. There's a photo of the boiler in the basement, nicely sat in there for 120 years, basically acting as a water tank. And it was a water tank until a few weeks before they scheduled their building to be, when they turn off the utilities, that's when it stopped being a water tank. We had to cut a hole in the floor to be able to get it out. And then we made a window into a door and had to chip away some concrete to get it on the lip because of the tightness of the crane. Anyway, you can see we got this getting pulled out and then getting ready to put on the truck. And there it is on the truck, and it's now down here in Saucon Valley. Lehigh owns, I mentioned they own the old Camp Meeting Road, New Jersey Zinc buildings. There's a machine shop there, and this 30-foot long, 33-inch diameter, wrought iron riveted boiler is now in there, waiting to be restored and put back to the site once we are able to turn it into a heritage park. And just for comparison, you can see how it fits. There's the end of the boiler, right? And you can see from Guy's model where that would have fit. It would have been encased in brick. And like I said, one of 22. 20 were always operating and 2 were out of service to be descaled because the water is so hard there. So one other thing that we were very pleased to get in December of 2022 is approval for a roadside market. We were one of 2 in the Lehigh Valley to get that. So the plan is we'll have a roadside marker out in front of the engine house at the gate. I got a commitment from Lehigh, they're gonna clean it up so that when you stop there to take a look, it's gonna not be all full of weeds and creepy looking. So we do have to do a little landscaping to make it look right. But we plan to have that sign in place next year, 2024. And hopefully we can make some progress on restoring the building between now and then. So I'm going to just take you back to Tony Munn's model. Again, encourage you to go down to the museum and take a look at it. If you go there, there's one other thing I'd like you to take a look at. I'd like you to look at the world's biggest nut. Now my wife was saying I'm the world's biggest nut. And maybe she's right, but physical metal nut. At the time this engine was operating, you could read in the different magazines that says, the world's biggest nut was there. This brass nut, and I don't know if Tony quite got the scale right, but supposedly weighed 1,600 pounds. It took 20 men with a 20-foot wrench to either tighten or loosen it. So just to give you the scale. So there you go, the world's biggest nut. Of course, that brass was valuable and it's not around anymore. Somewhere else. So anyway, here's a little bit on our preservation fund that Lehigh is operating. If you please go on my website, take a look. If you're interested in it, no amount is too small. There's lots of things we need to do. It's going to take a lot of money to do the full restoration, but there are a lot of things like repairing lintels and others, and vegetation and things like that we could do in the meantime with a little bit of money. And as my acknowledges, this is a team from Lehigh that worked on the project, and you can't go to the site by yourself. If you want to go see this place, I can take you, but please don't just go there and trespass. They got all kinds of trespassing signs, but you get a hold of me, we can arrange a tour. I'll take you all around, show you all the stuff. But let's do it kind of like before it turns to summer, because it's really creepy over there in the summer. It's really overgrown. You can't see much. It takes bugs and stuff like anything. So, and there's my contact. So, questions?
I have a question. That tree, did they ever do a time core on that?
I don't think so, but I think the thinking is it's probably 2 or 3. Yeah, it's we know the home is good. We think out of about 8 feet tall. So now whether or not they planted the tree or the house they're already out of the things that need to be more used in homes.
Randy,
He's not going to put hard. Sir.
Is there a timeline as to when they're going to prep the area so that it's available?
Yeah, well, I'm not really able to. I'm not a firm timeline. Lehigh's working now on a couple of different options, recreational options, or Heritage Park tied to it, so they're working through that right now. We don't have a time frame, although there's a sense of urgency that we need to move it forward. I have a sense of urgency because every time we have a windstorm like this, I'm crazy enough that I sit there in bed and worry about what's happening over there. I know that's kind of nuts, but it's the way I am. And so I'm very keen to get, and I think Lehigh is too, to get some closure on how we're going to move it forward. It's going to take quite a bit of money. I mean, we're talking, this is probably a career-making job for a mason. There's not much there more than masonry, but whoever mason gets to build this is, we'll be talking about for the rest of, he or she will be talking about for the rest of their lives, I'm sure. It's quite a job.
Do they eventually plan to build a full-size president pumping engine?
No, I think that's probably now, I don't see that happening. It's, there are a couple of Cornish-style pumps that survived, like Beale and Cornwall. One particularly large one I was at, and not as big as this, but it's, this was 110-inch diameter, so that one I saw was like 90-inch diameter. There's a couple in London because they were used in mining applications, but also in waterworks. In England, some in the States too, but largely in England. So if I were to hazard a guess, maybe around the world, just between maybe five to 10 Cornish-style engines that are both pumping and other style Cornish-style engines that have survived around the world. But I don't see them rebuilding it. I think what Guy Jansen's done is about the closest we're going to get to physically rebuilding it. I think the idea being, once we get the Heritage Park going, you'll be able to go in there, and maybe with technology, you'll be able to hold a camera up and look around and see, basically be in the engine, if you will, and have it surround you. I think that's quite likely to happen. So, Phil, huh?
Mark, it's great, really. Thank you for your support and all that great work you do. I mean, people like you, your determination and genuine approach is making all this possible. So, the excessive amount of water discharge, did it cause any kind of problem with the farmland and other neighborhoods?
Yeah, farmers weren't happy.
This looks like a lot of water.
I mean, that water was a problem in the 19th century, it was a problem in the 20th, right? 19th century, we'll talk about that for a moment, and then I'll move to the 20th. In the 19th century, the farmers, they said all the way over to Lineport, they were experiencing dry wells. Because essentially what the mine was doing was destroying the water tanks right in that area. They were unhappy. There wasn't much they could do about it, however, because as long as the mining company was removing the water in order to conduct their business, they had the law on their side. So now if they would have sold the water, then they would have had a problem, but they didn't sell the water. So if they had sold the water, then it would have been complicated legal for them. But, so they were clean. In the 20th century, okay, it got to be a little more complicated. New Jersey Zinc did the same thing as Lehigh Zinc did in the 19th century. They lowered the water table to make their underground mine, right? And that's why my friend Bob Lanning, as a kid, was able to crawl around the Uberoth mine pit because it was dry, right? And you guys who swam there, you must have swam before 1958, or 54 even. That's where the water started to come down in the early 1950s. But, but there, now they had to contend with a lot of Saucon Valley, steel company executives in Saucon Valley Country Club. They were all, how do they say it's nice, they were all upset at the fact that the stream going through the club was dry, and their homes, they had problems with their wells. So New Jersey Zinc, to placate everyone, and they may have had to do it legally because they were getting sued, they actually paid to build a pipe to come from Bethlehem to take Bethlehem city water. And they also, if they couldn't reach it with Bethlehem city water, they were actually filling cisterns of people who, so I've met quite a few people who New Jersey State was sending trucks around to fill up their cisterns with water, Yeah, so, yeah, it's an economic issue.
Yeah, 1955, the water went through.
Yeah, 1955, it was.
Yeah.
it
We
was-
had a cistern.
Yeah,
And they did, when the water went through, they did have a pump station right down here. See where we at? Colesville,
okay.
before you hit, used to be 191. Before you hit that,
Yes.
went down to, and there was a pumping station there for the truck. Then he went and delivered water to cisterns.
Yeah, I met a lot of people who said they had
But
cisterns.
we still had water in all the mine holes,
Mhm.
and we still had springs, 1952 yet.
Okay.
But tell me how the mine holes got here.
Well, how they, well, they were dug, most of them were dug out, some of them were already, like the New Brook was already depressed to some degree, even before we started.
All of them?
No, I don't know about all of them.
You know how many mine holes are in this area?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you?
No, yeah, how did, I don't know how.
Well, I started counting the other day, I think we had 10.
Really?
2 never went dry
Okay,
when they pumped
okay,
at the new place.
mm-hmm,
They never went dry.
okay,
When it's on, nothing is in company. Cammy Road, around the turn, that one never went dry.
okay,
And the one off, Oakhurst Drive, that one never went dry either.
oh, the Thomas mine, Thomas.
No, no, Oakhurst,
Yeah, but the Thomas,
but I ain't on it.
the one behind, Olympus?
You're talking about Glen Thomas.
Yeah, well, no. There's a mine hole behind, where Olympus is located.
Yeah, that's like Thomas.
Yeah, Lake Thomas, yeah, that one didn't go dry.
Pardon me?
I don't think that went dry.
Oh, yeah.
Did that go dry?
Yeah, it went dry. I told you which one didn't go dry. The one off of Oakhurst and the one down on the Cammy Road. They never went dry.
Huh.
And that, you see how, when the one down from Zinc County,
Yeah.
they were pumping 4-foot pipe water,
Oh,
and that they never went dry.
okay, maybe.
But all the wells went dry,
Mm,
but we never had a well. We had a cistern.
yeah.
Only had a cistern.
Maybe they were pumping water into this.
No water was on it.
Oh, seriously. Springs, I guess there were springs.
Oh, no, the spring went dry.
Wow.
All the springs went dry. I used to fish in the spring. I used to trap muskrats down where the watercress was, down at John Davies. That's where I used to mow yard. And Foster, the big mansions.
Mhm.
And
That's,
I farmed all the land. All that land where the zinc company owned.
I wonder why they didn't go dry.
Pardon me?
I wonder why those didn't go dry.
You got me?
Yeah. Huh. Maybe they, well, you speculate.
There was a stretch when the Saucon went dry.
Yeah,
Was that related?
yeah.
To
Yeah, that was related to the mining activities.
And what did they do? Just reopen it? Or
Well,
bring the water back? Or did it just come back through the
I think it just came back,
Well,
through the aquifers? Yeah.
when I went, this water was getting pumped into the Saucon,
yes,
so the zinc company down.
yeah,
They had two
Yeah.
holding ponds here, and then they had a spot where it was really low. They put a ridge around that thing for the creek, and then they had that filled up, and then that went into the creek.
yeah. Yeah, so they did some modifications. I think, I've seen some drawings of that, yeah.
But
Of course, the water went further downstream, I mean, the settlement farmers were mad, but back in the 19th century, the millers were delighted. If you had a mill
Yeah.
down towards Howardtown, you were getting tons of water, Wheels were spinning, but a lot more farmers than millers, so, I think, Any other questions? Sure.
You say your website has more detail on the pumps.
I'm sorry?
Your website has more information on the pumps.
Yeah, my website, this one right here, www.freedensville-monetaries.org. If you, yeah, I don't know, Karen, do you share the slides, or will you share any of the information?
Yes,
Okay. Good.
so you, okay,
I took a picture of this.
okay.
Yeah, please go on. There's more information there. I had a cold last week, so you're starting to lose my voice.